Hey everyone, Ahmed here. Sorry the episode is a little bit late. It was my birthday this weekend, and Yasmine actually threw me a surprise birthday party, which was really lovely, but that means that I'm editing late. Um, anyway, so this is the Muslim Manosphere episode that we talked about doing before, but I just wanted to do a little bit of an intro. So, in this episode, we're going to cover a couple of characters from the Muslim Manosphere. These are guys that kind of do dawah or preach and kind of proselytize on various social media platforms, but kind of do so in a way that really promotes their self interest as men. Um, and they do so by putting down women, LGBT people, and yeah, pretty much anyone who's not just kind of a straight guy. We cover a couple of characters, Andrew Tate, Neon, Fusi, um, Nabil Aziz, Daniel Hakikachu, just to name a few. But I think in the course of doing the episode and doing some basic research, we found that a lot of these guys are really interconnected. So I think if we were to take another stab at this, we would maybe chop it up a little bit more thematically. I think we can definitely bring in a lot more characters. We barely scratched the surface with what is out there and um, who all is part of the Muslim manosphere. So maybe we'll have to do a follow up episode to this. But, we would just wanted to get this out here because we do kind of see it as a phenomena that is gaining steam and I think attracting a lot of followers and in a lot of cases, a lot of people's first impression and experience with Islam. So for that reason alone, we just felt like it was something that was worth kind of putting out there and trying to collect into a narrative. And then, yeah, we're excited to know what you think. So if you have any thoughts about anything that you think we did right or wrong in the episode, happy to hear that. So send us your thoughts and yeah, talk soon. Enjoy the episode. Okay, welcome to the field between. I'm Ahmed.
I'm Yasmine. And we've got a special episode for you today.
Yep, we'll be talking about the Muslim manosphere and
all of its terror.
all of its horrible people.
Oh, terror is a bad word, but yeah, all of it's hard.
It's a little charged. Yeah.
It's a little charged, yeah. But yeah, that's what we got in store for you. Before we get into that, I've got 2 items.
Okay.
Do you have any items or is it just me?
I had ideas for them. Actually, I will say that that guy who escaped from prison. Did you see that story?
I don't think I did.
Did you ever see that video? There was
No.
a guy who escaped from, I think, like a Philadelphia prison.
Okay.
And I think he was there for murdering his girlfriend.
Mm.
I think we have to say allegedly, but pretty sure he did it. But there's a video of like he escaped jail and he was sentenced to life. But they were like, how did he get out of jail? How did he get out of jail? And then finally this footage came out of him going to an area in the prison, like between 2 walls that were pretty close together. And he just like spread out between the 2 walls. So his hands were on one wall and his feet were on the other. And he just like slowly walked himself up and out of the prison.
Wow.
And so they were on a hunt for this man for like 2 weeks. And they caught him today. But the really kind of disturbing thing that I saw from that is so they had all these guys in camo and like heavy like very heavily armed.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason they took a picture with him, like they caught him and then they all gathered around him like 50 guys.
That's
in
weird.
Like heavily armed again, like
yeah.
like militia guys,
Like almost like they were proud or like it was interesting
like you do
that
when
he
you
had
hunt a deer or
yeah,
something.
that's very
it was
weird.
Really fucking weird.
That's a weird dynamic. Yeah.
Anyway, so I saw that, but I don't really have anything else.
Okay.
All right, what you got?
This is just kind of like strange, sad, weird things.
such recall since July. The latest covers Texas tamale black bean tamales that may be mislabeled and contain an undeclared milk allergen. Well, Trader Joe's says no illnesses have been reported and that all potentially affected products have been pulled from shelves. Other recent recalls include almond cookies that could contain rocks and broccoli cheddar soup that may contain insects. We have an important...
Wait, the cookies have rocks in them?
There's been 6 Trader Joe's recalls, and I had heard that there had been recalls, but actually a former student of mine who is now a friend, which is always a sweet transition, posted that clip, and I clicked on it and I just started laughing hysterically because I was like, yeah, usually it's like salmonella or like, I don't know, but it's like straight up rocks or one of the ingredients in the cookies.
I'm like, okay, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Right? That happens, and it's in broccoli.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But the cookies just like straight up have, it sounds like someone like really fucked up.
I just think it's funny because Trader Joe's has all of these like really like clever, like cutesy little snacks and just like, yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
How do you get rocks in the almond cookies?
I know like in the Depression era, they used to cut corners by putting like sawdust for flour.
I don't think they're like, oh, we don't have enough almonds. Let's get rocks in this bitch.
Let's see if they notice.
Yeah,
I bet people can't, honestly. But yeah, I thought that was really funny.
I mean, yeah, people can tell when their teeth break.
That's true. But I mean, they're probably ground up, you know?
Oh, do you think it's like fine?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking like whole ass like pebbles and pieces of gravel.
Right. Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably a little bit more. I also just thought it was funny because the clip starts off. It might have started.
That makes even less sense. That does make it seem like maybe a little bit of like, yeah.
Yeah, the clip started off so reasonably. It was like, they forgot to list the milk allergen. I was like, I can see how that could happen. And then they hit you with the rocks and you're like, oh, that's not great.
Rocks.
Yeah.
Should we try to find some of those cookies?
I'm good. Yeah. I'm good to skip.
I mean, we do eat minerals, you know? That's kind of...
That's true. There might be
like
trace
rocks.
amounts of nutrition in there. But,
Yeah.
you know, I bet they weren't listed on the nutritional label, so...
Yeah.
That's not good. Oh, I like screenshotted one like kind of serious but sweet thing that I saw on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
This was like, I don't know who this person is. Emily Murray says that she's an RD, which I think is a registered dietitian.
Mm-hmm.
Body image research tells us that the closer we get to achieving our ideal appearance, the more conditional our sense of worth becomes, and the more we fear what will cost us when our appearance inevitably changes. I thought that was super interesting, and that really resonated with me. We like moved recently, and I like went through a change in exercise regimen, and so like slight changes to the body. I've had much more drastic changes in the past, but I felt these slight changes like a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's making me think about that kind of idea of like body and worth and how to try and untangle that a little bit. And the kind of irony of like, if you're closer to what initially had been your ideal, that it's almost like you feel more precarious than if you were further away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we apply that thinking to a lot of things too. Like,
yeah.
oh, I'm at my ideal salary and
right.
Well, before and
that's such a good point. Yeah, like it would be devastating if I lost this,
like,
but it's like, oh, you used to survive
worse
on so much less. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of how that could apply to other things.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, just like naming that mindset is hopefully a good step to like getting away from it.
Cat's just shoving her
Our
paws
poor
into the
cat
door.
really wants to join us, but the dryer is on, so I don't really want to open the door because it'll be loud.
Yeah, and also she's kind of annoying sometimes. She'll just...
But she's so cute.
She does this thing that really pisses me off where she just can't decide where she wants to be.
Yeah, she kind of moves around a lot.
She'll get on one side of you, and then she'll walk over to the other side, and then she'll leap over back to the side that she was on. And I'm just like, just make up your fucking mind.
It's not the most conducive for podcasting.
Yeah, because she's got a fluffy tail, and she like it every time she passes by, it gets in your face, and then it leaves trace amounts of fur in there, and that's annoying.
We're very proud of her, though. We have neighbors who we really like who have got these little dogs, and they come up to our glass door and kind of bark at Batata.
Yeah.
And she's really stood her own. We're surprised because she's usually a wimp, but she'll kind of like
throws her body at
ram her little body against the glass.
It's fun to watch. Did we say this already?
I think we might have, but it happened again this morning, and it was particularly ferocious.
Times. Yeah.
All right, that's
I
all.
See them fight. I do. All right, Manosphere. So I think the way we're gonna do this is, you've got an article that was written by your colleague
and our good friend Brittany Landorf. Yep.
Is she okay with us saying her name?
I think so. Yeah.
maybe double check.
Okay.
If not, I can bleep it out.
We'll make it mysterious.
Huh?
We'll make it mysterious.
Yeah. But so you're going to take us through that. And then I've collected some clips.
Ahmed hopefully is not becoming radicalized because he did some deep research for this episode, which is very great. But he's been like in the manosphere this last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to end, I've got
newly
some
emerged from the manosphere.
Yeah, he just got out.
Manlier and more spherical than ever before.
And then I think I'll end us off with some more articles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've collected kind of like the internet shitheads of the manosphere.
And I've got some of the more classics. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Great. So this is an article that Brittany presented. She actually didn't publish it, but she presented it live at a conference in 2019. And she put together a really excellent panel on Muslim masculinities. And not only did she put it together, but she also presented her own paper. Her regular research is on Sufi masculinities in Morocco, I believe in like the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't typically write about the contemporary, debates around Muslim masculinities.
Yeah.
And those who are not in academia, it might sound a little weird to say masculinity plural, but the idea is just thinking about different envisionings of being a man and what it means to be a man.
Okay.
But this paper that she wrote or that she presented was called Becoming the Alpha Muslim, Popular Da'i, Men's Rights Activists, and the Emergent Muslim Manosphere. And I thought it'd be a good place to start because she kind of lays out this internet landscape that we're exploring today, but through a particular person. And this was in 2019, so I don't know if this guy is as popular now, but his name was Nabil Aziz. And he had a whole website called The Alpha Muslim. And the premise is that he combines red pill ideology, which is this sort of Matrix-inspired reference. It's very popular among manosphere activists, if we dare to call them that,
so
or extremists.
When people are red-pilled, then, I mean, it comes from like the Matrix movie, right?
Right.
And you are seeing what is actually happening.
Exactly. So if you're in the manosphere, you're seeing that like men are oppressed and, how to get out of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of
everything
incels...
that you perceive from then on is like truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's like different levels to, I think, the non-Muslim manosphere. There's like the really extreme levels of like incels. There's pickup artists. And then there are people who are like anti-feminist, but we wouldn't necessarily describe as like incels or, intensely, as intensely misogynistic. So this guy, Aziz, says that the Alpha Muslim is the human ideal and that the Prophet Muhammad was the ultimate Alpha Muslim. That's his premise.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very similar to a lot of Christian rhetoric about Jesus, especially in the US, about Jesus as like muscular and a businessman. So I guess it was inevitable this would happen again, but it's still like a little bit disappointing, I think, to have such modern day ideas projected back onto the Prophet. I guess we're all doing that to a certain extent, but to make it seem as if there's only one definitive of him as hyper masculine in a way that today we would understand hyper masculine.
Yeah.
Even if the Prophet was the emblem of masculinity in his own time, there was like different standards of what it meant to be like a beautiful man, and a good man.
It's almost like this impenetrable, like circular justification of how they are, right? Like they say, being alpha is good because the Prophet was alpha.
Right. And therefore...
And because the Prophet was alpha, therefore being alpha is good.
Right.
Right. Like...
I feel like there are some good gestures towards like positive visions of masculinity and following the Prophet's footsteps. We always joke about used to get like Instagram ads, and some of them were silly, but some of them were sweet.
Yeah.
Of like, the Prophet played with his wives, be playful. There's definitely like things that are positive, of course. But yeah, he calls it his Bruce Lee moment, which is a really interesting like mixing of metaphors.
Yeah.
And I guess this has to do with like when he realized that this is like kind of the path he had to seize.
Yeah. But this is, what this reminds me of, and it's because we just actually finished watching Sopranos.
We finally finished it. It was so sad.
When Tony gets mad at Carmela, or he gets mad in therapy, and he's always like, "What happened to the strong silent type?"
Right.
But like the strong silent type isn't this like the stoic who, before he acts, thinks about what is virtuous and what is good. That's like maybe what they think they are, but what they're actually justifying is just acting in your own self-interest and being able to just be as shitty as you want and as narcissistic as you want and uphold really toxic values. And then you say, oh, that's being alpha and that's masculinity, you know?
Yeah, something I've thought about, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I also think we don't think about the suffering that those men might have gone through. Like, I think about my grandfather on my mom's side, who is like a carpenter and then worked his way up into management and like lived in New York City his whole life, was born and raised in the Bronx, and then like left for the suburbs at 33. And, you know, he was like really outgoing and like very, very masculine, and that he like commanded a lot of presence even when he was older. And I knew him, a lot of fun, but like had to give up his dream of being an artist to like support his family and like made a lot of sacrifices. And I don't know, like he was very reliant on alcohol, like drank every night.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things that like no one would have been like, well, he's depressed or like he's stressed, because they didn't use that language then, but like something was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you could just
a strong silence.
Yeah, you would just, I mean, he was actually quite loud and gregarious, but he definitely never talked in like mental health terms, or, you know, he wasn't familiar with that language. And he wouldn't have said like, oh, I struggle with a work-life balance, but in essence, he was on like, you know, he was commuting hours every day, and like, when he retired, he was so happy to get back to painting. Like, I think he probably missed that part of his life, you know? So I feel like, yeah, we don't think about also the feelings that didn't get to get expressed by those people, or like, you know, we just assume that they were happy, but it might have just been all that they got to do, or the only kind of range of expression they were allowed. And she's kind of continues here that at the same time as figures like Aziz uphold the Prophet Muhammad as the kind of paradigm of masculinity, they critique Islamic feminism as hypocritical, and kind of, in this case, like this guy calls like Muslim feminist thoughts. So kind of like a funny like mix of like using like a lot of like, he's a convert, but he uses a lot of Arabic, and like he's very like appearing very pious, but then like very quick to kind of characterize women with like very explicit language.
Right. Sexual language.
Yeah, and also very sexual language, definitely.
Yeah.
And I'll just read because I thought it was a good quote. She says that within the emergent Muslim manosphere, the crisis of masculinities men face is heightened by the belief that Islam is also in crisis. So it's like not only this idea that like there aren't real men anymore, or that like gender binaries are being threatened, but also that Islam is being taken away both by Western Islamophobia, but really they seem to be more afraid of like feminist critiques of Islam by people who also purport to be believers but interpret Islam differently than they do. And that's like the kind of main thing that is scary, or they see as a threat. Yeah. Yeah, and then she just kind of talks about the different sort of sources that he draws on, and it's everything from hadith to kind of like slightly alt-right looking memes. And he also, again, like drawing on the Prophet's example, is talking a lot about like the physical strength of the Prophet, which I thought was kind of weird because that's not something I like.
Oh, nice.
I've heard much about.
How does he... how do you know?
I don't know. The only like physical descriptions I've read of the Prophet, which are not many, are like in compilation of hadith that talk about him having like a moon-shaped face and dark eyes and like pale skin. So there's like some description of his physical body.
Carrying a child on his shoulders.
Yeah, but I don't remember a lot about like his muscle, so I don't know where that's coming from. But here, like, he seems to be saying pretty literally that like to be a man, you have to be physically muscular and like almost brutish. And that like somehow the Prophet would have wanted that, which is really interesting because that's not something I really can see a lot of basis for.
Yeah.
And then she just ends by saying that she argues that Aziz and the logic of misogyny and alt-right masculinity he embodies is perhaps not as fringe as we'd like to think. And that the logic of his gender ideologies are kind of gaining traction with more mainstream contemporary Islamic religious scholars, which I think is true. Probably not to this explicit kind of degree. But especially this idea, we talked about this a little bit in the Queerness in Islam episode of like masculinity being under threat.
Yeah.
I think is gaining traction with more mainstream.
I think people have this conception in their heads that there's a version of masculinity, like pure unadulterated masculinity is primordial.
Yeah.
Or before we had planned structured societies, essentially cavemen, What they want is to revert to a kind of like a caveman type relation to the world, where whoever is just the strongest is the one who wins.
Yeah.
And that's just not how things work anyway. Like I think what that says is that they are pointing out, and later on some of the clips that I'll show, is there are really, really good critiques of the way society works today and how things feel and how ultimately alienating a lot of our interactions are day to day, whether romantic or just work or interpersonal or whatever. These are all valid critiques, but they're kind of what they really want is just so seeing that and being able to identify it is the red pill part, and saying like,
so you're with them on the red pill.
Well, no, that's what they say. Like, they make these critiques and be like, I can make these critiques because I'm, red pilled. And then their solution to overcoming all these horrible things is to become alpha, which again is just kind of like a kind of conservative, like liberal sort of way of looking at things, where I'm going to prioritize my individual liberty as opposed to thinking of a cooperative way to do it.
Interesting.
But
I don't know, is
the
that
weird thing about
or
it
liberal, or is it just, are you kind of saying like it's very individualistic, which is very modern for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just think about maybe I don't know, maybe that wasn't the right description, but the weird thing about it is that religious communities, I feel like you have to kind of experience that collectively to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But they're trying to create like a hierarchy within it and place themselves atop it. I don't know. Yeah,
what I appreciate about what you said that I think is very generous but also fair is like, you're right, like maybe some of their sense of isolation and like seems to kind of be coming from a place of like lack of identity and loneliness. Like that part we can say like there's something there, and that a lot of people feel that. But right, the kind of answer they come to is this kind of like form of online community, I guess. Yeah. But if it's just like guys sharing Bruce Lee posters, I'm not sure how deep it goes.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's not like a kind of systematic attempt to change things.
Mm-hmm.
Or the attempt is one that we would not agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They see it as zero sum too, where we are less manly because women are getting more rights, or
totally
we're talking more about women.
And like Islamically, there's that kind of really interesting thing that they're like so threatened by Muslim feminists, even more than they are by people who like hate Muslims.
Yeah.
I feel like that really should be a second to kind of check in with yourself and be like, all right, like what are we advocating for here? Like if these people say that they believe in God and they believe in the Prophet as God's final messenger, like ideally you would have more common ground with them than you would with people who like dislike Muslims. But I mean, a lot of the language that they're copying is very alt-right language from many people who probably like are not a fan of Islam or of Muslims, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. What else?
I'm ready for these clips. I think that's all I had for this.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we look up this Nabil? What is his name?
We should actually. I should have done that beforehand. Let's see if he's still ticking.
Because he did not come up in my.
Yeah. My guess is that he's since been. This is like the prequel to what you're about to show us.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah, he's still posting, but I don't know if he's as popular.
Nice.
Alpha Muslim. I'm looking now at the website. How I went from straight A varsity baller to broke, starving, and homeless twice to family man and entrepreneur, and found Islam along the way.
Wait, so he was a varsity baller and then homeless and then a varsity baller again and then homeless
I
again?
think he was homeless twice.
Oh.
Yeah, but maybe. That's the way I read it.
Okay.
And then he became a family man and entrepreneur.
I mean, it depends on what high school you go to. It's probably not that hard to be a varsity player, you know?
He's got a podcast. Let's see if he's still uploading. No, has not uploaded for a long time. Oh. So, yeah. Interesting. Okay. He's got some episodes from a while ago, 2017. How to develop your personality to become more attractive. How to waste your 20s as a man. How to network like a pro. Oh, Trump year one, the alt bro perspective. Yikes.
Interesting. Do you want to play anything from that?
No, I'm good.
Sure?
That's
Maybe.
something else I forgot to say, though, is that Brittany mentions that he was like a pretty big Trump fan, at least like Trump's brand of masculinity, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll leave a clip. We'll leave space in here to see if we can. I'll watch it after and maybe slide something in there.
Sounds good. Yeah.
See, this is why I launched Becoming the Alpha Muslim, because after what we said, you felt the need to sort of qualify your language and couch your language.
Yeah.
I take a fairly hard line on this feminism issue. Those sisters that are helping abuse women and stuff like that, they're not actually doing feminism. They're just doing Islam.
Exactly.
If it's within the boundaries of Islam, why do you have to call it feminism? Okay, feminism as a word, it means one specific thing, and the basis of that specific thing is anti-Islamic. It's based on secular liberalist ideology, and it's basically a religion on its own. So if you're doing something that's completely within the bounds of Islam and that's obligatory in Islam, then why do you have to call it feminism or Islamic feminism or Muslim feminism? It doesn't make any sense. The word is actually redundant. It serves no purpose whatsoever.
Absolutely.
All right, but this was the early 2017s, like 2017 through 2020. So you're gonna give us some contemporary stuff.
Yeah, and I'll start off by saying, so I have been on TikTok and kind of just scrolling through, and I've been seeing, like Fusi, who was formerly known as FusiTube, has been making a comeback on TikTok, although now that is kind of, don't know where that lays, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. And then I was seeing this other kid, Neon, who I think I've mentioned on before, and we've mentioned Sneeko before, and I was just like, maybe I'll just focus on these guys because they seem to be the most prominent. And I thought there were just really going to be like 3 or 4 guys I could collect clips on, and we could have a pretty concise one-off episode. But when I was doing some research and watching stuff, I quickly went down a rabbit hole. These guys are just connected to a bunch of other guys, and there's just so many of them. A lot of them have thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers on their platforms. And so I don't think this is going to be a comprehensive overview of.
I think we're trying to be more thematic, but that is really interesting that there's so many of them. It's kind of worrisome.
Yeah. But I think what we can show kind of in these clips is that whether or not these guys are playing characters of themselves, they really are promoting themselves as Muslims. And furthermore, what a Muslim man should be. And to some young boys, they're role models to a subset of their audience. And they kind of become a template for what a Muslim man ought to be. And I don't think it's unintentional on their parts. They kind of have to, they must know that this is a growing demographic and it's going to get them clicks, and that, they can kind of capture this demographic to make money. So I've only got a couple of clips here because I was trying to be judicious. I didn't capture clips of all of them, but I'm mostly going to focus on Fusi, Neon, Sneeko, and Andrew Tate.
Oh God, Andrew Tate. And we should say for context, I think we've mentioned this in the podcast before, but in case you've forgotten or are just tuning in, Fusi was a very popular YouTuber when we were young, when we were in college.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of Arab mom jokes, a lot of kind of
very
niche ethnic
safe.
YouTube humor, but very respectful, really not out there kind of stuff. And then he fell off for a bit. I don't know exactly what he was struggling with, but I
think addiction, alcohol.
Okay. I didn't know that, but he made allusions to struggling with something. It sounds like it was alcohol addiction. And so this is him kind of making a comeback now and really interfacing with much younger internet personalities.
Yes, a lot of Fusi's recent comeback on TikTok has been him hanging out with teenagers who are also streamers living in these content mill houses.
That's so weird.
Which look just fucking awful. They are mansions, but they look terrible.
Because they're 17-year-olds who don't know how to maintain it, I'm sure.
No, it's not even that it's dirty. It's just that it looks like if Walmart were to make a house or a mansion, that's what, just all white everything, linoleum everywhere, and then just very awful lighting. It looks horrible. It looks
awful lighting is Ahmed's personal health.
But yeah, so Fusi's just hanging out with these kids, and then
And
also
he's probably
getting into
our age, right? Like I think he's like 30.
He's older than us.
Really? Yeah, like late 30s maybe.
Yeah, I think that's right. Mid to late 30s. He's just like getting into fights with children. it's weird. But last I saw of Fusi's that he swatted himself. So if you don't know what swatting is, it's where usually if there's a streamer who's on live, sometimes their troll followers will call a SWAT team or say that there's a bomb threat at their location or whatever to get a SWAT team to go there. He did that to himself at a hotel room and streamed it. And
just for the views.
It seemed like he was maybe having like a manic episode.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been active since then, so I'm not really sure what's going on. So I don't really have any clips of Fusi other than, to mention him incidentally is he's, maybe we'll talk about him when we talk about Neon, but he's kind of been MIA for like the last month or so. Okay, so I'm going to start with Sneeko, and I'm going to play these clips. Some of them are going to be a little bit longer. We'll maybe cut them in retrospect, but I do think there's, good context here. So this first video is about why Sneeko converted to Islam.
After 9/11, there was a big push against Islam, and we were programmed to think that all Muslims were terrorists for a long time. That always being played in the news and like people seeing beheadings, it painted Islam in a bad light for a long time. I used to be a nihilist for a long time. Wow. I really believed in nothing, and I had this dark time for a while because I didn't see any like proper role models. I didn't see anybody who we're supposed to look up to. We pretty much had to listen to the government. I didn't believe in them, and I was kind of just like pretty upset about everything, and I don't care about anything. Nothing matters. I'm just gonna do drugs and cope, and nothing matters. Like my impact on the world. This is what I was thinking, and I was echoing this. I was making videos about this. And then even like before that recently, I would just like, I'd have these moments like just nothing, whatever, nothing matters. But now like having a specific faith and a belief, you don't want to waste any time. I've been more efficient. I would say I'm more awake. I'm less tired. I have a clearer purpose. I want to be more mature, and I'm thinking about marriage and how I want to raise my children more. Just I want to have a more clear direction for my future. If anybody watching has this phase where they think that nothing matters and they're kind of nihilistic and they don't care about anything, I think a good first step is to looking into Islam, because that will give you a clear direction for exactly what you're supposed to do.
Okay, so I'll pause that there.
Aw, I know that he seems like a bit of a troll from what you told me, but that is very sweet. I'm glad it gave him a sense of purpose. And there's like I
like that he feels less tired.
Yeah, that was very specific. It's also funny because they're like, you can't see the video, but there's like infographic type, or it's just like a little like video of someone like waking up that's not him. It's like a funny inspirational like style video.
Like a very potent multivitamin. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think there's anything bad here. In fact, like this is all very relatable, right? Like he's capturing that we live in a world where like government structures are not acting in people's interests. There's a lot of distrust. Like, yeah, a lot of people can agree with that. Just general alienation and feeling like you don't have a lot of say over the direction that your life goes in. Absolutely. Like these are all things that make sense, right? Like,
right.
You can imagine someone listening and be like, wow, I feel the exact same way, and this guy's honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that's actually been a really accurate phenomenon in the US, that after 9/11, a lot of young people were drawn to Islam, ironically, because it was, it's like the kind of thing where something is being portrayed negatively, and so then you look into it for yourself, or it almost kind of had a alt kind of punk rock feel to it because it was seen as something that was I would say this is unfortunate, but something that was kind of scary or violent. So either people were drawn to it for that reason, or more often, I think, because they like then wanted to like see what the deal actually was for themselves.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep playing the clip.
Mm-hmm.
He starts to he lost me a little after this.
Because that will give you a clear direction for exactly what you're supposed to do. In the Quran, there's a guidebook for how you're supposed to live your life. It tells you everything that you're supposed to do. Especially if you look at the life of Muhammad, if you're a man, you could see the blueprint for how you should live your life. now being more centered and having a more clear worldview, you notice how there are so many different ways, so many different lies that you believe in when you are clueless, and when you say like I'm spiritual, I'm astrology, like you're so easily scammed and programmed, and you don't see past a lot of the lies. And I get kind of upset now, like how did I ever believe in that? And it's because you don't have a clear faith.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
The spiritual, not religious thing is like a very modern and a very American phenomenon that I think often people are referring to something else. So I kind of feel him on that. I don't have a problem with people being into astrology personally, though. Yeah. Even though it's not my thing, but that was a funny line. I'm not astrology, or I'm astrology. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of echoing of Brittany's article, just in terms of the prophet being a guide to masculinity.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he starts to kind of bullshit a little, right? Like he's just like, oh, the Quran tells you exactly how to live. And you're just like,
I mean, a lot of Muslims would say that.
But it doesn't.
Right. And even if you're talking about
a lot of, stories, and you're supposed to kind of, it's not just the Quran that's going to tell you exactly how to live. Like that to me says that this guy has not really engaged with much text. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way.
Right.
But to pass yourself off as, a person who is a role model in the religion.
Yeah.
And to not really have engaged with it deeply, like I mean, he's like a bullshitter.
I have a couple of thoughts about that. I will say, one, there's no kind of fervor like the fervor of the recent converted, sure. Right? So, I mean, there's just kind of like, I think you see that across traditions of people who convert like really believe it, and they really had to think it through, and they're really excited. So there might be some of that. Like I discovered this thing, now everyone should discover it if we're being generous.
Yeah.
I really agree with you. I'm inclined to agree with you, but I definitely want to clarify just so no one misunderstands us. Like, of course, we think that the Quran is really important to engage with and a beautiful framework. But I think that what you're saying is a realistic take, that you can't just read the Quran, realistically. And certainly the two of us are reading it in English and translation. We don't have those skills to read it in Arabic, for comprehension. We might use it for prayer or whatever.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, and the thing is that like before our contemporary moment, people often relied on scholars and on written works to help them understand. And there's acts of translation that have to, even if you believe this is text, the direct word of God, there's a lot of like translation that thought goes into seeing how it applies to your life.
Yeah.
And I get this with my students a lot too. They'll say things like, well, the Quran says, and often they're actually drawing on things that are in Hadith, or even like just things that they, that are legitimate traditions, but that aren't like explicitly in the Quran. And then they're kind of surprised to learn that.
Yeah.
A lot of what we consider to be religious doctrine is not just from one text. It's from centuries of tradition and of scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think here, I mean, the sad thing is like these guys do kind of, whether intentional or not, speak in such an authoritative way that they position themselves as like pseudo scholars in the religion.
Even this guy, you think?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
he's so young and all over the place.
He's not going to tell you like, oh, I'm like issuing like a spiritual ruling or whatever like that. But I think it happens in a much more pernicious way. So he says, for example, he lists like two things. He's just like, oh, like all these lies out here or whatever. And he seems to pick two things that he personally just does not like. It's like, these things are lies and I'm against them, and they are like against Islam. It's just like being, spiritual, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then like astrology.
Yeah.
Which, if you really want to dig into it, the astrology thing is also kind of like, oh, women are into astrology and women are stupid.
Oh, interesting. That might be some of the subtext. Yeah.
I think that's some of the subtext there. So, and it's kind of like, again, like the Jordan B. Peterson thing, where like, I don't know why I call him Jordan Peterson
yeah,
thing.
I like it. Adds a little
the
flavor.
Jordan Peterson thing, like where he's just like, oh, men are order and women are chaos.
Yeah.
Women like
That.
astrology.
I would love to be
chaotic and blah, blah, blah. Like there's all this stuff just kind of like builds on each other. And when you're online enough and your brain is just ping-ponging back and forth between these references, like all just kind of starts to melt together.
Like it almost becomes his own doctrine, you think, like these things are reinforcing themselves
Kinda.
for young men who are listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brittany's article, I don't think I read this part, but also mentioned Jordan Peterson as being a big influence on the manosphere, so that seems consistent.
Yeah. I'll believe that.
Yeah.
For sure. Because again, they're not coming from it from like a super like religious scholarly position, right? Like these guys are just kind of using Islam as like a cover that other people can't really push back against because it's like your own personal faith,
right?
To lend them legitimacy as to like why they think women are stupid or why you should eat red meat.
I was part of like for summer I did this like camp thing that was really fun. It was an academic camp. I got a scholarship for it, so it wasn't really camp, but we called it camp because it felt like that. It was a bunch of us living in a motel for a summer. And I was witness to some serious heated arguments about astrology. One of my good friends loves astrology and is very into it. She's also very devout, very practicing. Really a wonderful academic and wonderful person. And people were like really offended that she was into like astrology. So sometimes those debates do happen.
Yeah. So I think he starts to say, you know, it's kind of like a rhetorical strategy where he's laid out a convincing premise and that a lot of things in this world are alienating. And then he goes on to say what he thinks is given him meaning. And then furthermore, you know, and then moves on to defining like the things he takes issue with personally. So like astrology and kind of saying that these are part and parcel of like the world of alienation, and like kind of implies that these things which are outside of like Islam's defined borders are like out to get you and to corrupt you and to make you less of a man. And they kind of construct Islam within borders, and they're like, if you're within this, you're like protected and you're good. But if you're outside of that, then you're susceptible to corruption.
And something else we should mention is that a lot of like, I don't think that this young man is necessarily engaging with like classical scholarship, but a lot of classical scholarship is very male biased, you know, like a lot of it was written by men. And so there is this kind of reinforcing thing that I think it's easy to claim a tradition as masculine centric and to kind of like write off more feminist interpretations or even more like diverse interpretations and just kind of find what you're looking for there.
I would love to hear one of these guys go up against like Keisha Ali or like Amina Wadud.
I mean, the thing is like they're not I mean, that wouldn't be a fair fight. Like this guy just converted and he clearly knows not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be almost more interesting to have I mean, because there are like academics who kind of feed onto the fringes of this. They're not as extreme, but
or not even like hear her like talking to them. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah. How would they even try and articulate a response?
Yeah, like to hear them do a reaction video, I would actually be very interested in. Or would they, on some level, know that they're charlatans? You know, and they're like, "Oh, I shouldn't do a response video to this."
Yeah. All right.
I actually forget what this next clip of Sneako's is.
We can be surprised together.
He's on a podcast called The Three Muslims, which I actually just found out about.
Like he's a guest on this podcast?
Yeah. And he's talking to the guys. I don't know their names, but The Three Muslims is a podcast I had not heard of until yesterday when I started really doing research for this.
And you paid me a clip. They're British, right?
I don't know if they're all British.
Okay.
But
British, I'm going to say this now. British Muslims are crazy. I don't want to generalize, but I'm going to really generalize.
Any personal experiences there? Or?
Yeah. I mean, not like super.
Really?
Yeah. Just like whenever I've met them, I just feel like they're like, I mean, maybe we're headed in this direction. There's a lot more of them, but their like conception of conservative is way more conservative. I think a lot of different politics play into it, but also a lot of British Muslims are South Asian and Desi or South Asian British Muslims. There's also a lot of politics with like class and colonization and like formerly colonized people. So a lot goes into it. But they like have had like protests in some towns and cities against like LGBTQ affirming curricula, like things that are only just starting to happen here. Have been happening there for a long time. Yeah. Of course, there are also lots of wonderful British Muslims and lots of progressive British Muslims, but it does seem like on the whole, like their conservative segment is louder than ours. Though maybe that's changing now.
Yeah. I will say on the conservatism front. So I've kind of, presented this clip of like Sneeko talking about why he chose to be Muslim, and like a little clip that gives some insight into him kind of starting to speak from a position of authority without really seeming like he has a lot of substance to his argument.
To be a man. Yeah.
But to just kind of like put in context of some of the other shit that he says and does, like, he's like doing these cross streams with other creators like Neon and Fusi, where they're hanging out with girls who do OnlyFans all the time, and they're in clubs. They're definitely living a life that a lot of people would say this is off the path.
Right.
Again,
certainly seems to be off the path that they themselves are promoting. Yeah.
Right. And it just kind of is, confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty hypocritical. Yeah.
It's very hypocritical. But again, like young boys might see this and be like, oh, it's okay to kind of, these women who are in their videos who do OnlyFans, they don't matter. Like, they're just kind of like whatever. They're,
and that's an old kind of misogynistic trope, right? That's sort of like, well, like, I look down on these women and therefore like I am not a part of the problem, or
that's it. A lot of the videos that Sneeko is in where, Fusi and Neon are hanging out with these OnlyFans girls or whomever he's with, it is a lot of clips of him judging these women. But off camera, I'm sure they're like all hanging out.
And also there is something sexual about that,
very,
like, being like, oh, like you're a slut. Like that makes you superior, or you're not lowering your gaze if you're staring at someone saying you're a slut.
Right. And then the other things is, he's had countless videos of him just being like, it's wrong to be trans, wrong to be gay, blah, blah, blah. Like just runs the whole gamut of the conservative ideology, not even just conservative Muslim, but conservative far right ideology. Maybe I'll slide in a clip or whatever here, but Fusi will do this thing that he calls a zesty voice, which is coded language for gay voice. So he'll speak like with a very effeminate voice and a lisp or whatever, and he does that on his videos to be funny. Ostensibly, like he'll say, it's like when someone asks him, why are you doing that or whatever, and he's like, because I'm comfortable with my sexuality. But the real reason is that he knows that it makes some of the other people on stream uncomfortable, or he thinks it's funny to affect a gay voice because gay people are to be derided, right? So these are just like some of the things as examples of, this isn't just a guy who felt alienated and converted to Islam and is like a little bit conservative or whatever. It's a guy who says all these things, and then his videos, and we can't play all of them, but like if you watch multiple videos, he espouses just like very male toxic, sort of anti-gay, a lot of anti-progressive, anti-women like ideology. So it's hard to capture all of that in just like one video, but that's just, what I've been picking up on. Anyway, so I'll play this clip. I kind of forget what was discussed here at the beginning, but maybe we'll very quickly see. Come on. Okay, here's an ad for someone who's also very hungry and...
That's so sad.
Jesus Christ. All right, I'm going to skip this one too.
I like the respect that Islam promotes. I've always talked about how the religion that I identify with the most is Islam. Islam is always called the religion of peace, but the messages I'm getting, it does not seem peaceful. Like, that's my honest reaction. The amount of people sending hate and wishing death and violence and saying, I'm going to choke you. Like, they're very descriptive. Like, there's going to be Muslims standing outside with baseball bats. You're very descriptive about the ways you're going to be violent. How can you still be a religion of peace? You think I can still convert? Or is it too late after the stuff I've done?
Oh, so this is taking place before his conversion.
Okay, good.
Sorry, should mention that.
So if you right now were to accept Islam on the spot, or tomorrow, or the day after, or next week, or next month, or next year, Allah will forgive you for everything that you've done. But I want to be very clear and say that we can't play games. We can't plan to get to 80 and then accept Islam after a life of sin while knowing it was the truth.
So I think I'll maybe just pause it there. That intro to the episode was pretty good. What else did I have here? The video. So they had him on to talk about, or he had them on to talk about this controversy that arose when Sneeko made fun of Muslims or whatever, and then he got called out for it. Let me see if I can forward to it.
So before he converted and made fun of them.
And you guys have seen the clip. I'm gonna play it. I could share the screen, but it's really short. I'm just gonna play it real quick for them, so they understand.
Like imitating Arabic and pretending to pray.
Okay, I played the clip.
I think that's
now
funny.
I can stop playing it. I won't do that again. Basically, and it was taken out of context. That clip, I don't know if you've seen the original stream, but I was actually reacting to acts of haram. I was reacting towards people who are walking around with their dicks out, people at pride parades, Western women acting like hoes.
Wow, what a list.
Response, I was doing mocking the Muslim prayer sound. Can you explain to me why that's disrespectful?
Okay, I'll pause there. But yeah, that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of just the things that Sneeko hates personally is women.
Yeah, you're really right. Also, I think it's funny. He hasn't even converted here, but he's already like identified these haram acts.
Right.
And they're clearly
And
just things he doesn't like.
He
Yeah.
himself was like a victim of the Muslim manosphere, right? Like he saw.
But then he joined it. Yeah.
Well, no, like he joined it because he saw as like, these other guys who are Muslim also feel the same way about Western women, and they feel like they are better than them and all this stuff, and so maybe I should convert.
So he joined it for the misogyny.
Yeah. This is an hour and 14-minute long interview, so I didn't watch all of it. So I can't really say much of the 3 Muslims in this particular clip. But they do have 182,000 YouTube subscribers.
That's respectable.
That's a lot. And if you go to some of their videos,
Nah, I'm on YouTube a lot. 180 is like respectable.
180,000.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, Milena has 180,000.
I know, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so these guys, they have on this guy called the sartorial shooter.
What's that?
He is a former military Australian convert to Islam who lives in Dubai.
Great. Okay.
In like a fancy ass mansion. And I found out about him earlier today. But so some of their videos, so they have this guy on. Again, he's kind of like another Muslim manosphere type guy. They have videos about Andrew Tate, and they're like, oh, inshallah, he will be released. In fact, this sartorial shooter guy is like apparently like just best friends with Andrew Tate. And this other guy named what's his name, who maybe you've seen before. Okay, it doesn't
Sartorial shooter is a good name, though.
Sartorial.
Sartorial, like clothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
Honestly, that would be a good name for you.
Yeah. They do have a lot of anti-porn stuff, but
that's nice. I like that.
I find it hard to believe that they take their own advice when they're also hanging out with just like a bunch of women who do OnlyFans.
That's funny.
You know
yeah,
like,
you're right.
Let's I don't know, do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, those are 2 other characters who I was introduced to.
I'm not totally
Muslims
against porn, by the way.
Shooter.
I'm just against like unethical porn, which is most of porn. But yeah,
we like our porn free range.
Yeah, we only consume free range porn.
Mm-hmm. Make sure that they get plenty of sunlight.
Yeah.
Get to run around in the grass.
Right. They're not confined.
No. Okay. I've got some Neon. We've talked about before. He's like a young kind of teenage. I think he's 19.
He's really young, right? He looks younger
Very
than
young.
Sneeko. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like 19 years old. I think Sneeko's probably in his mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
Neon's style is that he's just very rapid fire, yells, gets very like erratic on stream, and calls women bitches and like tells people to shut up, and is just again like very rapid fire troll kind of type of conversation.
What is the platform when they're streaming? Is it Twitch?
They do a couple different ones. So they're on YouTube, they're on TikTok. It's usually not just one, but they'll do I think Rumble's another one, and Kick.
Yeah, I don't know any of these.
Yeah, I'm not on all of these, but I just get what I get from like TikTok and YouTube,
right?
And Twitter, I was trying to go back and like piece a narrative of Neon and like figure out what was going on, but Twitter is so fucked up now.
It is.
I don't know if you've noticed, like, have you gone to anyone's timeline and like looked recently?
I mean, I keep on saying this. I'm going to be on Twitter until it dies, but it's pretty much almost dead. Yeah.
But you've gone to someone's profile.
Yeah.
So have you noticed that tweets aren't just like ordered by date anymore?
Are they ordered by most likes?
I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, no, I've noticed it's messy. Yeah.
But I was going back and like trying to figure out what he last posted and what's been going on. And I see a video from like August where he's just like, I quit streaming, I'm done. I'm like, he was just like seemed very broken. And then a post from like February 2021, and then like another post, So it's hard to tell chronologically exactly what's going on, but he seems to, after all of his streams with Fusi, something happened early August where he was just like, I feel like I've just made a total mockery of myself. Like I hate it. Like I hate everything I've done. I quit streaming. But then like 2 days ago, he has a video on his YouTube of him streaming with an OnlyFans model. So
probably hard to walk away from the money and the fame at such a young age.
Yeah. I'll play that video for you first, where he just kind of seems like a little bit exasperated.
This past week has been the worst week of my life. I don't know what happened. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but it's been terrible. I'm a joke. I am a disgrace to my community. I'm a disgrace to my race. I'm a disgrace to my religion. I'm a disgrace. I'm a fucking joke. I'm a joke. I'm a damn joke. I don't know what to do anymore. I've been doing YouTube for 5 years, and I've never once felt this way in my entire life, to where I just never want to come back ever again and never want to show my face. I don't know what I'm going to do. I love you guys. I know no one in this world actually loves me, but it's all good, man. I love you guys deep inside, and I'm going to take this time to figure out what I want to do next. I don't know if you guys will ever see me again. If you do, I'll be a new man.
So there's that. Very exasperated. Seems somewhat genuine, like he's really troubled. Feeling a little alienated. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean,
lost.
A lot of these I feel like people probably have mental health problems that are exacerbated by the fame of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Followed up by this.
I haven't been in tune with anything, and I see this random clip from Andrew Tate talking about me, trying to help me. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, here's the clip right here.
Happened to me does not surprise me at all. I feel bad. So I'm actually extending an olive branch to Neon. If you want to talk about it, if you want to fly here, if you want to learn to train, if you want me to tell you how to deal with this, if you want me to tell you the best way you can bounce back from this and become the best version of yourself, talk to you.
And I'm going to be honest, I was shocked when I saw this. I was literally shocked. I've talked to Andrew Tate one time, and it was for like 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, I was the most fucked up human being possible. I was saying the most weird shit ever. I was violating him for no reason. And this guy wants to come out of nowhere and says he wants to help me, train me, put me under his wing. I don't know, bro. I'm not going to lie, bro. I just want to say this, Andrew Tate. If you're watching this video, bro, I really appreciate you, bro. I really, really do. You are a fucking great human being, bro. You're an amazing human. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't think anyone else is doing that. After someone literally sat there on the internet for 10 to 15 minutes and tried shitting on you, and you come back and you want to help me. And I'm going to be honest, I need help. I do. I've been so lost and clueless this past few days. I've had no idea what to do in my life. And it's been like, it's like I'm living in a fucking jail cell in hell. I'm burning to death. It feels like shit. I don't know. And I'm going to be honest, I accept your offer. I would love to come and for you to help me and change me and change my life around, because right now I'm on the wrong path and this shit's not going to end well. I accept your offer and I appreciate it, man, for real.
So Andrew Tate to the rescue, but a helpless little boy on the wrong path needs spiritual guidance.
Yeah.
Who better than Andrew Tate?
It's like a weird dystopian Sufi lineage sheikh model. It's like
it's like if a Sufi sheikh was like a pyramid scheme, like an MLM marketing scheme version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like a very predatory car dealership kind of guy, and he's teaching you how to sell lemons to poor people. So yeah, that I guess brings us to, I will say before we move on to Andrew Tate, you know, Neon mentioned before, again, lots of videos of him, talking to, let me go to his YouTube very recently.
Talking to like OnlyFans girls.
Yeah, and I played one for you yesterday for a little bit.
Yeah.
Where what had happened is that, again, at one of these like little hype houses or whatever, where there are content mills, I don't remember the kid who owned it. I don't know what his name was. But Neon was there. I think at some point Fusi had shot content there with Neon, and Sneeko was also there. But Neon was being chased around the yard of that mansion by these two women in bikinis.
Who looked very young. I mean, I have to assume they must have been 18.
Just out of high school.
Hopefully they were 18, but they looked very young. Yeah.
Yeah. Very. Yeah. But they were chasing him. I think they were like trying to twerk on him or something. And again, he was doing like the "No, I'm Muslim," like "Get away from me, you whore."
Right. But clearly for the clicks, this whole shit was orchestrated.
Right.
But yeah.
All orchestrated, yeah. And he tripped in the yard and like broke his foot. And so he was doing a follow-up stream to after he had broken his foot, and he was talking to this girl, and he was like, again, playing his character, but again, it's hard to separate what's genuine and what isn't if you're probably a younger person watching this content. And he's just like, "I'm gonna sue you, fucking bitch, you broke my fucking foot, you whore," calling her a whore over and over again. And then he asked her, he's just like, you know, "What do your parents do?" And she says they're radiologists, and her mom does something else, like owns a business or something. He's like, "Oh, you must be such a disappointment to your parents. Like, how could they ever be proud of someone who just like shows their like breasts online and does OnlyFans and all this stuff?" And just like kind of like laying into her in a very judgmental, again, like very misogynistic way, which.
He's so successful. Then wait, do your parents even like you?
Yeah, they love me.
You like no, like they're like radiologists and like dentists and shit. And they got a tree just showing their tits everywhere. There's no way you're not a disappointment.
Yeah. Man, no, this.
Oh, that's hitting her hard. Oh, that's hitting you. I could tell. I could see by your eyes. That's hitting you hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hitting her. Oh, I hit her. Oh, that hurts. I know that hurts. Yeah, this hurt too, you dumb fuck. This hurt too, bitch.
To me, is not
super pious or Islamic.
Pious Muslim man would do.
I have a question. Does he say he's playing a character? Like, it's hard for me to tell. Like, what indicators are there that we're supposed to like not think this is his real self?
I mean, they'll never say, right? Like the whole point is that they have created these characters.
You're just saying, like, obviously this is like a.
But I just assume anyone who is doing something online like that, they are a character of themselves. Like they're not their full authentic
I mean, we're never our full selves when we're doing something that's public facing, but
I think you and I are characters of ourselves right
exactly,
now.
100%.
It's not as like extreme as this.
Of course not. Yeah. But he's not saying like it kind of sounds like the what was that awful guy? Was it Rush Limbaugh with Sandy Hook?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh, like I play a character on my show."
Oh no, you're talking about Alex Jones.
Oh yeah, my bad, not Rush Limbaugh. Lol. Alex Jones with like the Sandy Hook shootings. He was like, "Oh, like well, I just play a character." That was his defense, like on my talk show. Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, it's not the same thing as like a parody. Like it's still based on your real self. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like, oh, because he is a character of himself, it absolves him of responsibility.
Right.
But
it's not like Borat or something, you know?
I don't think this is who he is, but
he probably doesn't know anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It is messy in that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because, like, yeah, it's not as if he's saying like, well, I just do this. Like, he doesn't have a video saying like, oh, I just do this for.
No.
Yeah. Okay. My job.
Okay. Yeah, so like 2 days ago, he has a video with this porn actress named Sky Bree.
Interesting name.
Yeah. he actually has quite a few streams with her. And again, it's hard to like figure out the chronology of these. Like maybe this was content shot, you know, like months ago, and now is coming out in like little bits. It's hard to piece all together, but
definitely a lot of discrepancies there between what we would think of as someone who like is trying to live a pious life or represent Islam, and
So okay, so we're on Andrew Tate now. I just have a clip that I thought was funny from him. I don't know what his last status is.
He's still in jail, right?
I think he was under house arrest for a year, but I don't know if he's been released yet or not.
Okay. Wasn't he like
for running a sex ring?
Yeah.
And sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Essentially he had become a pimp to a bunch of like Eastern European women who were doing OnlyFans, and just taking a cut of what they were making.
I've complained about this before, but so many Muslim men online, even Muslim men you wouldn't expect to be manosphere-ish, were like, you know, have patience with Andrew Tate, like see where he lands. He's a new convert. And then when this news came out about this like sex trafficking ring, they didn't say shit. Yeah. And these are the same men who are so quick to attack women and say like, well, if you support like LGBTQ rights, or like if you don't wear hijab properly, you're not really Muslim, and like do takfir and say that people are like gonna burn in hell. Have infinite fucking patience for Andrew Tate. It's crazy.
Yeah. And as far as I know, Andrew Tate has not, since his conversion, come out and said like, oh, the things that I did in the past were wrong. Right? He's continued to kind of proclaim his innocence, that like what he did was not wrong. So it's not like, oh, this man is converting and grappling with his past sins or anything like that.
Yeah,
and
like,
oh no, he's just converting.
Even if you believe that, even if you believe, which like many people do, that when you convert, your past sins are like wiped away, he's continuing to do things that, like, he's continuing to pose with like models and bikinis, which again, like, I would not care unless he also was being so awful towards women.
Right.
And the same men who champion him would like look at a woman in bikini and like be disgusted. So just like, yeah, the whole thing is annoying.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a video of Andrew Tate explaining why he converted to Islam. And I think these Tate clips are going to be a little bit longer, but then maybe in post we'll cut some of it out. But again, it's why he converted to Islam. And he says he's found scientific, irrefutable proof of why.
He's a what's up, auntie.
Yeah.
Talk me through it. Sure. So firstly, I found scientific proof for God. I'm the man. Everyone's been sitting here, all the atheists saying there's no proof for God. I've got it.
Okay, let's stop.
Here's the scientific proof for God. I've got all of it. I think it's his third law. It might be a second. We'll have to look it up if it's third or second law. But one of Newton's law is that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every force, there's an equal and opposite force. Anyone who's perspicacious enough to look around them and sees the true evil in the world today understands that there must be an equal and opposite to that true evil, which is good, which means that God must be real.
Flawless.
Damn. Centuries of scholarship just could have been summed up. I agree with that.
Yeah, sure.
So I understood that the thing that made me stop being atheist is simply not evil. It's like, if this much evil, if Satan is going to appear, if Satan appears in front of you, you're going to have to say, okay, well then God must be real. And that's the point we got to. I realized there was so much evil, so much injustice, so much. It's just the endless, genuine, deliberate attempts at destroying the baseline morality of humans. Just making us believe that to the point where pedophilia is even bad. Like, incest is okay. Like, things we know are wrong. We just innately know it's wrong. And they're just trying to...
Who's arguing for pedophilia and incest?
Are you accusing Andrew Tate of creating a straw man?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
That's
I wonder if
wild.
this is a gesture towards like the far right idea that there are like
That
leftist pedophilia
They have
rings.
a basement full of children that
Yeah.
they're milking
Even though
their
they're
adrenochrome glands.
Unfortunately, there like is actual pedophilia that exists
Right.
all around us. But okay, yeah.
Yeah. I just love that he provides an argument which a priori, which requires you to like a priori like believe in the things in which he's presenting an argument for.
As if they're novel and new. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just, and also just like making like an appeal to science, which is like kind of how my dad would prove the existence of God. He would try to go back in this like circuitous sort of like, metals and magnets and blah, blah, blah.
Your dad's an engineer. That's sweet.
Yeah, so he's just like, God must be real because Newton says X, Y, Z.
Right.
And now I'm going to take this completely out of the realm in which it applies, and I'm going to apply it to this other thing in the
Right.
metaphysical realm, in which I presume that demons exist. And then, because I am assuming that demons exist, then God must exist.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally sympathetic to kind of looking around the world and being like, oh, like, there must be a greater force, or like,
Yeah.
because there is evil, I have to believe in a source of supreme good. But then to say, oh, it's scientifically self-evident is another thing.
Well, it's just like, okay, Newton's third, like that's about like momentum and transference of energy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Every action must have an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah.
So yeah, I just, for a guy who is like self-styled is like, oh, Andrew Tate's actually very smart. Not a very sophisticated.
But I mean, that's
argument.
the thing with like these sort of speakers is they just speak with a lot of confidence and a lot of
Right.
like boisterousness, and that's what wins people over.
Yeah, it is funny to just like hear him talk,
Right.
because he is such a stupid guy. But yeah, you just you go up to him and you're like, actually, I don't believe in demons. What does that do for your argument now? And he's just like, oh,
He'd probably just keep on yelling shit at you.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd be like, well, I guess you're a pedophile then. Pedophile is like the new Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be that you could just invoke Hitler and Nazis to end any argument.
Right. Without
Now
even
it's
it making
pedophile.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna play a little bit more. He does a little bit of a comparative analysis of all the Abrahamic religions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this I'm gonna play again until like another 2 minutes.
So I understood that the thing that made me stop being an atheist is simply the amount of evil I saw around me. I was like, if this much evil, if Satan is going to appear, if Satan appears in front of you, you're going to have to say, okay, well then God must be real. And that's the point we got to. I realized there was so much evil and so much injustice and so much.
Specifically?
It's just the endless, genuine, deliberate attempts at destroying the baseline morality of humans. Just making us believe that to the point where pedophilia isn't even bad anymore. Like incest is okay. Like things we know are wrong. We just innately know it's wrong. And they're just trying their best to destroy our moralities. And these moralities were installed in us by somebody or something. I believe God now. And they are attempting to destroy them. Who would attempt to destroy the baseline morality that was God given? Satan. So if Satan is trying to destroy our morality, then God must be real. So equal and opposite forces, Newton's law proved God. So once I realized God was real, it's like, okay, then you have all these different interpretations of God, which is interesting. What's interesting about the Christianity-Islamic debate is that they're both Abrahamic. And also, people said to me, well, you're not from the Middle East. Why would you be Muslim? And it kind of makes me laugh. I say, Christianity, didn't that all happen in Palestine? Like, all of it comes from the same place, right? I'm not a scholar, so I don't want to get on the scholastic route. But Christianity and Islam have a lot in common. They worship a lot of the same people. Islam has another book, the last book, which was the Seal. And truthfully, if we're going to step away from the scholarship angles and talk about the Bible and the Quran, etc., I look at it in a different angle. I look at the world through a very realistic understanding of force. And I understand that if you're not prepared to defend something, it will be taken and destroyed. I understand that, like we said earlier, violence is the underpinning of all civilized societies. Even when I look at a big tree, I see violence. I understand that tree is the biggest because it destroyed other things.
Oh, is he trying to fight the tree? What?
Oh, I actually missed that the first time. Even when he looks at a big tree, dude. Violence. That's
That's the opposite feeling I have when I look at a big tree.
We gotta rewind that. We might have missed his justification for why he feels so violent at this tree.
Even when I look at a big tree, I see violence. I understand that tree is the biggest because it destroyed all the other trees around it.
It's the biggest because it destroyed.
It went into tree battle.
Not just that it like could perhaps be older
or like we killed the other trees.
No, it's because that tree destroyed every other tree.
It ate them and became a bigger tree.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Christianity doesn't mean anything anymore. If the Christian interpretation of God was correct, then God would be giving them the strength to resist, but they don't resist anything. I don't believe Christians have preserved a single thing in modern time. I know in America there's this hard-line Christians who believe that they're trying hard. They are still failing on a daily basis. And in most of the world, especially in Europe, Christianity is absolutely and utterly a joke. The thing that actually finally converted me was about 3 weeks ago. I'll send you the TikTok. It was the first drag queen Methodist preacher. Oh, geez. Yeah.
So did you catch that?
That TikTok, how did him convert?
Yeah, so he converted because he saw a TikTok of a drag queen Methodist preacher.
Yeah. And he's like, this is not it.
But this is the point. If you're tolerant of everything, then you stand for nothing. So once you say I'm a Christian, but I tolerate everything under the name of tolerance, well, then you no longer have any beliefs. So if you have no beliefs, then all of it is garbage. If you're the only way you can worship a God is if that God gives you instructions, and if those instructions are adhered to and respected by the followers, and also if the followers of the particular God, I'm not going to say names, stick up for and defend those beliefs and are prepared to be ridiculed or prepared to be stigmatized. And two, like I said earlier, a bottom line of...
All right, he's just going to keep talking. He must lose his fucking mind if he sees a forest. he's all these big trees, like a fucking war.
Yeah,
genocide
he's just like, damn, they're coming for me.
All I see is violence.
So basically he was like, oh, Christians are too tolerant. Great. This is the guy we wound up with. He was like, I'm looking for an intolerant religion.
I'm looking for the most intolerant.
I'm looking for a misogynistic. Great. And he was just like, looks like that's Islam.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty
Nice.
much.
That's awesome. Great.
Which for obvious reasons you can see why that's problematic. And he also makes this very essentializing, very straw man argument that once you tolerate anything, it's equivalent to tolerating everything. So on some level, I think he's trying to connect the fact that a drag queen preacher or whatever exists and is tolerated because you accept a person as they are. That would mean that you would be okay with someone spitting in your face. You know what I'm saying? Like he's...
I don't think he even has to make that second leap. He's just kind of saying, like, if you're inclusive of people who are LGBTQ, then, like, you're not doing religion right.
But I think on some level, he's trying to just make all of these things into the same thing. Like, anything that's outside of the bounds of what I deem acceptable is equivalent.
Yeah. It's also interesting because, like, he's not really saying what drew him to Islam. It seems more like it was a vehicle
well, he
to
found scientific proof.
Right. But that was just of God, not of like Islam specifically. Like it seems like he was like, all right, there's a God, and he felt convinced of that. And then the way that he went about finding his particular religious tradition was a vehicle to like reject the things that he dislikes.
Yeah.
There's like an anti instead of a positive. That seems to be true for a lot of these guys, actually.
Yeah. It begs the question. Okay. So you saw the TikTok of this Presbyterian drag queen priest, but yeah, like what how do you go from that to being like Islam is the right thing?
Like I believe in the Prophet Muhammad.
Like were you watching like Taliban, like Al Qaeda videos?
Like, hopefully not, but yeah.
But you know, like I mean, I'm sure he was watching some like of these shitty religious scholars who were just like astaghfirullah, like Western blah blah blah. Like there's no shortage of these guys. So
yeah. But yeah, I feel like times in my life where I felt closer to God, and I feel like this is true for both of us, it's been more like an affirmation of something than a negation of, you know, of things I don't like. It's like a chance
when
at
I'm able
hope,
to
a
be
chance at
accepting of
community.
more things.
Yeah, and like a chance of like exactly connection to something larger than yourself rather than like a vehicle through which to reject things.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess of course there's rejection of like, yeah, you know, like of poverty ideally, of inequity, like of sure. But I would say that like
things that are deleterious to the human spirit.
Right. But I would say like the thing that makes me feel most strongly connected is like a chance at affirmation and positivity.
Yeah. I don't look at someone who is much different than I am from a different background and say, this is bringing me farther away from God.
Of course not. Yeah.
I look at being like, oh, how do I like show love to this person?
Yeah.
For me, that's a way
Andrew
of
Tate
feeling closer to God.
is potentially bringing me a little further away from God.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't generally feel that way.
Oh, I had a
honestly, I don't even care about Andrew Tate that much. Just like all the men on Twitter who were commenting on him that drove me insane.
Right. He wouldn't be a problem if he didn't have a following.
Right.
After
this, should we transition to the classics?
Yeah. Oh, I had a tweet about Shaitan the other day. Okay, so he has
like by far the most followers out of these guys.
He retweeted a man wearing a rainbow t-shirt and just said haram.
He learned like one word.
Yeah. Oh, actually that was November 22. See, Twitter, I just can't fucking make sense of it anymore. Well, that's a bummer because there was something that
he has like massively more of a following than these other guys, right?
This is not a real Cobra Tate account.
Damn, you got duped.
I got duped. Here we go. Here's Cobra Tate. Verified.
Nice.
He looks really bad now that he's been under house arrest for a year. Anyway, okay, I can't find it, so that's not that big of a deal.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so
I've got
two guys.
Some slightly more classics. So these are two men who, at least one of them, I think, has some more traditional religious training, and purported to be like a leader. But I think are on the edges of the sort of manosphere space that we've identified.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is Nouman Ali Khan. Nouman Ali Khan was a really big like YouTube proselytizer. I used to even watch some of his videos like a very long time ago during Ramadan, just like to have his background. And some of them are fine. I mean, it's just like he would go line by line through chapters of the Quran. So like, I mean, again, very different than these guys, and that he's actually engaging with the Quran in like some level of detail and like is trained and, you know, can speak Arabic and read Arabic, more importantly, classical Arabic. But very conservative stance. So was super against, you know, some of the more obvious things that a lot of people would agree with, like premarital sex, but then also would say things like if you have opposite gender friendships, like if you're identify as a man, you're friends with people who identify as a woman. He probably wouldn't have said identify, but you know what I mean. Like that is the same as like having extramarital sex, which is ridiculous. Like just friendships are a problem. And then it came out that he had been texting all these women while he was married.
But
so
if I remember, was one of them underage?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
But he had 7 children. He was married. And while he was trying to get divorced, he was already texting other women.
Okay.
And going on dates actively, and taking shirtless photos and sending them.
Yeah, you showed me one of the shirtless photos earlier today.
Okay, asshole guy. Shirtless photo was better than what I was anticipating.
He's flexing.
There was some muscle definition.
He's got muscles. You could tell he works out.
Right. So I mean, like, I'll tell you after this. You've met her too. I met someone who went on a date with Nouman Ali Khan, so he was definitely like making the rounds.
Really?
This is before we like knew that the wife didn't know and that they weren't divorced yet and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Should I tell you and you'll bleep it? Or I'll tell you after.
No, tell me later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only met her once, really briefly, but yeah, he like was obviously hugely hypocritical. It was a huge like fall from grace.
Yeah.
But the craziest thing about this story is that he's back on the fucking circuit. So he's still uploading videos about marriage, videos about proper gender relations, no sense of like remorse. And the bar is just like so low. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like if a Muslim woman does anything wrong, like she could never talk about piety again.
Right.
And like, you know, of course, like less people listen to him now, and like a lot of people think it's kind of a joke, but he still is kind of out there, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's the Nouman Ali Khan story, which is basically a story about how like if you are a man with a beard, you get to do whatever.
So it's not just that like, oh, you can espouse all these conservative things, but I think part of what makes someone part of this Muslim manosphere, again, it's just like this group of guys who just constantly reinforce one another, if not directly through their words, but through their acts. And they're part of this little power structure, and they have a lot of influence of Muslim discourse, especially
it's also
in the West.
The hypocrisy, I think.
Yeah,
you know?
and then there's this like level of hypocrisy. It's just like watching politicians do insider trading.
Right, exactly.
Right, like you're just like, oh, they prosecute people for this, but then they are profiting from the system that they've created, which punishes people for doing the same thing that they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and the kind of like easily accessible YouTube videos with good background music that Nouman Ali Khan makes are probably the kind of videos that like converts like Sneeko are likely to find like when they're first searching for things, especially if they are trying to look for like a really male perspective on Islam.
And I think it also serves the purpose, like their struggles, their personal cancellations or whatever, provide a kind of like underdog narrative or comeback story thing.
Absolutely. Like, redemption.
Yeah. And people like that because then they see, oh, well, Islam is actually such a forgiving religion or whatever. But again, like you said, it's not
for everyone.
Well, again, we don't want to attribute this to Islam, but like their version of Islam is, you know, it comes off as forgiving to this man.
Right.
Because men can have these personal struggles and men can falter.
Right.
As long as they pick themselves up again. But
if a woman wears like
whores.
A tank top yet alone, right? Like sends like a shirtless photo to someone.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's that. And then there is Daniel Hakikachu, who just like is such a dick. He's just such a dick, man. He's a convert. He runs a YouTube channel and also a blog called The Muslim Skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole deal, I'll show you a photo of him, is just kind of being like, he's wearing like
incredibly
a hat
square
and
head.
like got a long beard.
He looks like a fucking Roblox.
He's got
like
a thobe on.
Character.
He just kind of is a troll. And he actually really goes after kind of more center Muslim figures. So Omar Suleiman, who I have mixed feelings on. Unfortunately, he signed that awful letter. But he has done some good work in the past in other spheres. He's like accused Omar Suleiman, which I think is so funny. This is a headline that Omar Suleiman is promoting LGBT and gay marriage, which is like definitely just not true. Omar Suleiman has never been like pro-queer.
Okay.
But his take is that like because he's not against it, he's for it. So his sort of strategy is to chip away at people who like don't say
you have to pick a side,
offensive things essentially. And actually it's sort of working, unfortunately. I mean, not that.
I mean, that's kind of like what the Tea Party did within the Republican
Yeah,
Party.
exactly. It's a very similar strategy. This article came out in 2021. I don't think this article is directly related to Omar Suleiman becoming so much more like publicly anti-queer, but I think it's people like this who collectively have added to the pressure to be like, take a side. What does Islam actually say? Whatever. Here's a really great article from the Middle East Eye about how this like MSA called Farmingdale State College in Long Island, MSA is Muslim Student Association, tried to have an event titled The Roles of Men and Women in Islam, talk on how to live the best life as a Muslim in marriage. And it was the two other MSAs also from Long Island, and Hakikachu was invited, and like to their infinite credit, the women in the Long Island University MSA like were furious and just like started a huge campaign, and they got their MSA to pull out, which is great.
Nice.
Because I mean, yeah, again, like out of all the people that you could have come to speak on marriage, why have someone who has such incendiary views? And to give you a little taste of those views, he's really big on talking about how minor marriage or marriage of minors is not necessarily a bad thing. So here's an article called Minor Marriage, Why All Existing Studies Are Unreliable and Conclusive. And his idea is that because there aren't enough minors that married in the US, we can't properly know that it has adverse psychological effects.
Oh, Jesus.
The only kind of caveat I'll give him, this is a major caveat, like I haven't read enough to know, he hasn't mentioned it in this article, but I'm guessing that some of this is based on like one of the Prophet's wives, Aisha, reportedly being quite young when they first married. though they waited several years before they consummated the marriage, and the age that she was is like highly debated. And it is kind of a painful thing, honestly, to contend with. Childhood was a very different concept then, but that doesn't mean that it's not real now, right? Like people used to die very commonly in their 40s and their 50s because we didn't have like vaccines and because, you know, life was hard. But yeah, I just think it's such a ridiculous thing to then say like, well, Islam sanctions child marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously like a very dangerous thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I personally just like, in order to keep on going, choose to believe that like Aisha was older when they consummated the marriage.
Yeah, that's very troubling. Also perplexing. I mean, I'm not saying like he's in the exact same boat as like Andrew Tate and everyone else, but on one hand you have like these guys, they cover the gamut, right? Like they're like, oh, we're anti-pedophile, but also
we are
pro-pedophile.
right. Yeah, that's true. I guess
we encompass
to
the
be fair, they have
spectrum.
some complexity. Yeah. They're not all the same. Yeah, that's funny. Here's another headline.
Tate Madhab.
That's right. The Tate School of Law is anti.
Can you still sign up for Tate's top G classes?
Oh my God, I don't know.
I need to see if the top G university is still open for business.
So here's another. This is, I think, by someone else. I guess ostensibly by a woman, but there's no way for us to choose that. By Khalid. On his website, there's an article called "Muslim Feminism Destroys Marriage." Again, similar to a lot of the talking points that I think Brittany brought up. This idea that like Islam is being destroyed by feminists primarily, and even by people who purport to be Muslim but are feminist.
Yeah. Oh, I will say, sorry, before I forget, there's along the same lines. I've seen more in the clips that I watched yesterday and stuff, just like on these some of these like the ones that we didn't really go into that much. But there's like an increase of day youth conversation.
What's that?
Or like discourse. So day youth is like essentially like a cuck, like a Muslim cuck. And like a guy whose wife goes out and dances and, you know.
Where is the word from?
Day youth? I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You'd have to look it up. But a
Muslim cuck?
Yeah. D-A-Y.
Oh, it is an Arabic derived term.
Yeah, it's Arabic. I just don't know what like, the history or etymology is exactly.
A person who's apathetic or permissive with regard to unchaste behavior by female relatives or a spouse.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
So tangentially, when talking about the perceived threat of like Muslim feminists and like feminist kind of interpretations of religious texts or thought, a lot of these guys mention like day youth and be like, you know, they'll call a guy that if he's progressive or if his wife dresses a certain way or whatever, right? So maybe that's like something we'll set aside for another episode.
That's such an interesting collapsing of categories. Like it's like as if like your wife dressing the way that she pleases means that you are cuckolded. Like that's an interesting, yeah. logic.
Mm-hmm. But it's all part and parcel of like, oh, Muslim feminists are imparting Western values onto Islam, and they are cucking us all. You know what I'm saying? Like we are all being
it's like a representation of Islam as masculine. Purely.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
That's interesting. Weird. I hadn't heard that term.
It's like a gendered binary.
I'm realizing now that I think you told me that term before, and I had the same reaction. That I was like, I've never heard that.
The first time I'd heard it is actually our former neighbors had like brought it up to me. There's like a whole subreddit which I haven't looked at yet, but
I actually I just found it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw it referenced a lot more in some of the videos that I was watching.
Very
yesterday
interesting.
And today.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. Oh, and also I just found out like there was a guy I was trying to remember earlier. His name is Faris Al-Hamadi, and he's just like this old kind of like sheikh looking guy. Hold on, let me zoom into this picture.
Nice.
Right there. But he meets up with
these youngsters
with the sartorial shooter and like I think the 3 Muslims guys.
Okay.
And I just like went quickly and watched some of his videos, and like there was a woman had asked the question of like, is it okay as a woman to have a male personal trainer? And he's like, absolutely not.
A lot of people would say that, but yeah,
he's
that
like,
is
you're gonna
silly.
be there and they have to touch you, which is not true. They don't have to touch you. And you're going to be wearing clothes and he's going to be perceiving you like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And I was like, He's like, it's different if it's a doctor because the doctor has to like, it's medical, it's needed. And I'm like, how can you make that distinction from
right?
What about a physical therapist?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Just finishing up with the MuslimSkeptic.com with like Cookie Getchu's website. He's got a lot of like really dopey, but I can see how this stuff travels. Like this is like
this? Hold on.
a meme. So this is reading before and reading now. Before it used to be A for apple, B for ball, C for cat, but now it's A for asexual, B for bisexual,
Hell
C
yeah.
for cisgender.
D for drag. So it's also within this meme, it has references to other memes. So on the left hand side, it's like the trad wife.
Oh, is that
meme.
what that's referencing?
And on the right-hand
Okay.
side, it's like this kind of asexual, like pink haired sort of
figure,
non-binary version of that.
That's the trad wife. You're right. They're really copying from Christians, man.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
not
they use a lot of
creative.
this
woman's not wearing a hijab. She's blonde. They're just like,
it's a blonde white woman. Yeah, it's like the trad, like the Catholic trad wife.
I don't know what this is.
No way. Apple just released a
I don't know what that is.
I actually, hold on, wait, go back up. That's actually kind of funny. Apple just released the.
I don't know what that means.
Madkhali? I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
sorry if it's an offensive word.
That one. Oh, he's really out to get Omar Suleiman.
He's probably just trying to get like a rise out of him so he could get a shout out.
Yeah.
I like that foot licking emoji though.
Imams who like to mix with women, we feel no attraction whatsoever towards these beautiful specimens that we gaze upon and interact with. Wouldn't that make you gay? Impeccable logic.
So you can't interact with women. If you interact with women in a way that is not sexual, then you're
gay.
Yeah.
Right? It's so upsetting.
And he's using the penguins from the animated movie Madagascar.
Yeah, which I don't know what the connection is, but that's such an awful, like, especially when imams are meant to be spiritual leaders. It's really unfortunate when you overly sexualize those kind of relationships.
Like
I don't know.
Or is he just kind of
no? I'm just saying that sentiment is bad. No, I think he's just like self-appointed.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, that's all I had for him. I'll end on like he has like once in a while he has like a fine article, just so I'm not painting him in like an unfair light. Like this I thought was a decent article.
But that's the MO, right?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, any number of these guys, they will say something that resonates,
right?
Is relatable,
right?
And you can't really, from a left perspective, you're just like, yes, this is a good diagnosis of something that is happening and is a problem.
Like, I mean, this one was like less of like a left-right thing, but the article was basically about how like we say sometimes like accept people as they are and like how we should actually push people to be their best selves and like this idea of like I am fine the way I am.
But then best self means a guy who is jacked, hates gay people,
likes penguin memes,
will call women whores, yeah.
He also got very virally famous for talking about how his wife liked to pray in a closet.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's it, I think, for this episode. A lot there. I think summary takeaway is just that it's a really growing sphere. It's a worrisome trend. And I think that we need more media to counter it. They'll never, the shock value alone, you don't want to meet that because it's just bad. Yeah. But I think that there are ways that we could try and counter with like more positive messaging. And again, I think you had a really good instinct with like recognizing that at least some of the people's alienation that draws them to these spaces is real, but maybe that they haven't quite found like the path. No,
it just reinforces more and more antisocial behavior rather than like pro-social sort of cooperation.
Yeah, but super interesting to see. Like, I was really surprised that like Andrew Tate is talking to these young men. Like, that's fascinating that they're directly communicating with each other.
Hangs out with young boys a lot.
So does weird.
Like his other like good friend is a kid named Aiden Ross. I mean, he's an adult. He's like in his 20s, but like they are much younger than him.
It's interesting. But I guess he's trying to stay relevant.
Neon, I think part of it is like these guys are relevant and they're good for his clout.
Yeah, still something weird about it. Yeah,
I think part of it is like, oh, he's a role model and he can kind of
disciple them,
show them the path, and he's supposed to impart wisdom onto them. And gems like I saw when I look at a tree, I just see the most horrible, violent, gnarly shit I've ever seen in my life.
We encourage y'all to go for a walk and encounter all of the trees that you see.
I'm gonna go observe some violence after this. Actually, yeah. All right, I think maybe at some point
do a follow up.
Yeah,
there's a lot here. It's interesting.
A lot more. I
bet we could delve. It might actually be interesting. I'd be interested. I think we both have an interest, but you've especially done a lot of research on other forms of radicalization. I know you've done some research on like white nationalists.
Yeah.
And I think that
against them, by the way, I'm not.
Right. He's not. Yeah, Ahmed Amr is not pro white nationalist, but I mean, I think that there's something with the kind of radicalization and alienation more generally that finds ideologically specific footholds. I'd be interested to learn more about like, just, I don't know, those patterns, because I think that people from different walks of life are kind of like finding the same answers just in different corners of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested to read some more literature on radicalization and also on de-radicalization. Like, what do you do then with these people who have been kind of programmed in this way?
Yeah, and I think I would like to collect clips along the way. I actually wanted to play some of the older Neon Fusi clips, but a lot of them have been taken down.
Interesting.
Weird shit. Anyway,
do the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, I didn't really have time, but
no, that's fair. Also, this is like more than enough for one episode, so yeah.
I think we're pretty good to go. Yeah, but I'd be interested. Actually, I'll put this out there. If you have thoughts or clips that you've collected or anything on this, I'm like really interested to hear from anyone who listens to this episode, what they think and how they kind of view all this stuff. Because I don't know, are we overreacting to it? Are we giving it too much credit?
Oh, I don't think so. But yeah, I would be curious if there's other perspectives on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
We'll call it there. Bye.